Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. A good yard and garden takes years to establish, but when you move, you have to start over. Today, we're going to talk about how to get off on the right foot with a new yard. Also, there are certain plants you don't want if you have pets. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Dr. Natalie Baumgartner. Dr. Natalie is the Residential and Consumer Horticulture Specialist for UT Extension, and Joellen Diamond will be joining me later. All right, Doc, let's talk about getting this yard started.
Yeah, so this is actually a fun question that, we're getting a lot, I'm sure you are, in your role as well. So we have folks moving in to the state. We have a whole new generation that's buying homes for the first time.
Right.
And of course, folks who move. So I think that this is a really great time to help people get established well in a lot of, the base principles and practices of horticulture.
Right, because a lot of these folks have moved into homes and they've inherited this yard. So what do I do with it?
Yeah.
Right? That's what they're asking.
So I think that as early in that conversation, of course, I always like to figure out, are we talking about an out-of-state move-in? Are we talking about, first time? I think that that climate comes into play, right? Because we have a lot of folks who may be moving to the area, who may be retiring, and so are you moving south? Have you come, from the north? And so a lot of that mindset about, growing climates, it comes into play when you think about turf grass, when you think about, selection of species. So knowing really the temperature ranges, the climate zone, those are things that I always like to talk about. Yeah, of course you're crosstown folks, you don't have to worry about that as much. And then we think about some more specifics on the site. And so I'm smiling because we've now made it, a minute and a half, and we're just about to say take a soil test, right?
Yeah. Finally, right?
Yeah. It's as long as any extension person ever makes it into a conversation without bringing up soil testing.
Yeah, why get soil tests, right? Yeah,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I think that even if you're familiar with the concept, it's important to be really detailed about the practices, right? So your lawn would be different from a landscape bed, which would be different potentially from your garden site.
Right.
So, and I would say that, especially if this is a whole new area, I would probably oversample rather than undersample initially.
Okay.
Because you don't really know how that site has been managed. And so, having separate samples for the lawn, for the landscape, for other growing areas might help you narrow down differences that maybe you didn't know of.
Okay, I like that. All right, good deal. Yeah, so get your soil tested, right? All right.
I know when I got my soil tested when I moved to my house, the lawn, for instance, was high in P, it was high in K, and so I found out phosphorus and potassium very early on that a complete fertilizer was not what I needed. So those are important things, even if you're not going to make any big changes. But the soil test will allow you to then get recommendations based on your site. Make sure you rule out pH and things like that.
Okay, good deal.
And then we want to start to think about, I've kind of laid the foundation. I know some of the basics about my climate, about my soil. Now, kind of do an assessment of the plant material and what we have.
Okay.
And oftentimes this discussion will include ID, right? It's one of our other, one of our other favorite things. And so thinking about what species do I have? Are they performing well in that site? Because just because it's there doesn't mean that we need to keep it.
That's right. It doesn't mean it's happy either, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we want our plant material to survive and thrive.
Right.
Got it.
And those kinds of decisions are true for lawns as well as landscapes. It may be that we're inheriting a lot of cool season grasses that struggle, and larger changes might be better, to a warm season grass. So we want to make a detailed assessment and maybe even draw a map, right? So sometimes it can be helpful to, to kind of map out, pick out your trouble spots, and use this in conjunction with the soil test information that you got.
That's good.
And then we get to the fun part.
That's the fun part, right?
Yeah, because then we get to make our landscape plans based on our own needs and desires, right?
I do like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal.
So then we want to think about, what our own goals are. Are there kids? Are there pets? Are there, how do we really want to use this space?
Okay.
Because we don't have to keep the percentage of lawn versus landscape. There could be lots of ways that we could adjust. Large plants or trees wouldn't necessarily have to remain if we needed more sun, if we needed more, space. So that kind of gives us the opportunity to decide what we really want. Do we want outdoor living? Do we want, flowering?
Like that.
Do we love lawn? All of those are fine, right?
All of those are fine,
Yeah.
right?
And then we can integrate, broader principles as far as sustainability. Are we making sure that we install things that are water efficient? Are they well placed? We're going to use all the cliches, right? So we've already said,
Right plant,
don't.
right place.
Yeah.
Right plant, right place.
Yeah. And so those are our two favorite extensions.
Yes.
Phrases right there. And then once we kind of have those basic principles, then we can start to build, our landscape plan onto that. And I think that what I always try to encourage folks is don't start at an overwhelming pace.
Yes.
Move
I
slow.
so agree. Move slow. Just a little bit at a time. A little bit at a time. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
And I know even in my own landscape, I just kind of did, a bed at a time, and kind of, over time, then you're able to install your vision. I repainted my house to match my shrubs.
How about that? Look at you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All right.
But
Serious.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then you can add in smaller scale food production, wildlife support. And so kind of thinking about different areas over a period of time gives you a chance to focus and, and learn new types of gardening. Maybe this is the raised bed year. Maybe this is the small fruit year.
Okay.
So I think that, learn new options, enjoy it, and don't feel like it all has to be done at the same time.
I like that. And then, of course, this hits home for you because you moved to Tennessee from West Virginia, so you had to
Right.
learn about soil types, sites, drainage, and things like
Yeah.
that. So, okay.
Yeah, so it's funny when I told my best friend that I was moving to Tennessee, she was like, "Well, Tennessee, what do we grow there?" I said, "Solid crepe myrtle territory," right?
All right.
Because
Right.
for my my folks at home, like you could plant them, they just may not survive for very many years, right?
Funny, yeah.
And so yes, I do describe states by new species. I've really enjoyed being on the 7 line because there's a lot of things that I really hadn't grown very much until I moved here, and it's true when you move north as well, right? You get into stronger lilac and rhododendron territory
Right, that's
if you
right.
move
Okay,
north.
something we can't grow well here.
Yeah,
Right, exactly
yeah.
right. I like that. Good deal. All right, so yeah.
Yeah.
If all else fails, right, locate your local extension office.
Right. Yeah. So know your site, know your options, and make good friends
Make good
with
friends.
your resources. We have great folks that'll help you with these things, and a lot of good businesses in the area that provide great
Sure.
plant material. So I think enjoy the process.
Enjoy the process, she says. I think she enjoyed her process. Thank you much, Doc. We appreciate that. It's good.
I'm an extension specialist with the University of Tennessee, and a very common question that I get is, what exactly is extension? So it's a really fun part of the public universities that we work for. They're called land grants, and we have them, many of them, all across the country. And so we do research in very applied areas, in food production, in nutrition, and then that research is delivered through university employees that are our extension service, and they are based in county or regional offices all throughout the states in which they are affiliated. So each land-grant university has an affiliated extension system, and those extension personnel are dedicated to providing free information that's research-based to improve the lives of the citizens in their area. It can be on agricultural production, as well as lawns, landscapes, nutrition, youth. It's the service that we provide to our citizens, supported by our great public institutions.
All right, Joellen. Plants to avoid around pets, really?
Yeah, pets, yeah. I have a couple of pets that actually like to eat some, one of them likes to eat tomatoes, and that's on the list of, no, you don't eat tomatoes for dogs.
So Chevy eats tomatoes.
Chevy eats tomatoes.
What is Glory?
Well, Glory eats, she will run in the backyard and she grabs some of my perennials and she'll chew on and eat them before I say, stop. But luckily, it's not on this list.
Good,
so I'm
good.
not gonna worry.
All right. So let's find out what's on the list then.
Let's find out what's on the list. We're going to go through some annuals first. Begonias, believe it or not. Begonias are on the list. Coleus. A lot of these are common plants. Forget-me-nots. There's a lot of seed of that people put out. Geraniums. Lantana.
Really?
And lantana has a liver toxicity with it for pets. So that's not a good one.
That.
Some larkspur and of course the Christmas poinsettia. I mean some people will plant it outside, and so it'd be a possibility that pets could get around it. And if the leaves fall off of it inside, during the Christmas holidays, you don't want your pets to eat those either. So be careful with that. Then there's of course the perennials. Now, and there are more on a list than this, but I'm going to the ones that are most common. Some of the perennials are Asclepias, which everybody plants as the butterfly weed.
Right.
For the monarchs, well, that's fine, but if your pets get a hold of it, it's not good for them either. So keep it away. Carnations is another one. Dianthus, chrysanthemums. Of course, that makes sense because there's chemicals for kill insects made with chrysanthemums, so that wouldn't be good for Fido or Fluffy.
Yeah.
Then there's dahlias. Dahlias aren't good for animals. Daisies. And foxglove. Now foxglove is probably, you're going to see it out blooming in the nurseries and stuff, but just remember that is cardiotoxic chemicals in it, which affects hearts of the pets.
Cardio. Oh.
Yeah, cardio. So it's cardiotoxic. Don't get those. Iris is another one. Lenten rose, one of my favorites. And that's evergreen. It's going to be around all the time, but don't let your pets chew on it. Lily of the valley and May apples. Out in the woods. Yeah. But don't let Fido or Fluffy eat on those either. Peonies that have just finished blooming. Those are also on the list. And yarrow.
Yeah, okay.
And then we're going to move into herbs, vegetables, and fruits.
Wow, you shocked me already with this.
I know. This is alliums.
Okay.
Garlics and onions, and then ornamental ones. Don't let them chew on those either. And of course, then there's apples, cherries, plums. The seeds of all of those have cyanide in them, so that's not good. And a lot of people will let them fall, on the ground, leave them on the ground.
Yeah.
That's when the animals can get a hold of them. But besides that, even the leaves and the stems are not good because they have chemicals in them that are toxic to animals. So just think about it. If you want to toss a stick, or there's loose sticks in the yard, and the animals go and catch them and try to play, they tear them up. It's not good because those are not good trees to have around for your pets.
Oh man.
Citrus fruit too. Now, citrus fruit, a lot of people have citrus fruits that they bring in and outside around here.
Okay, yeah.
So those are not good. The actual fruit themselves is okay. It's the coating of the waxy coating around, and even the leaves and the stems, again, is not good for them.
Like your lemon and lime. Oh, wow, okay.
I know.
Wow.
And then, of course, grapes and raisins.
Okay.
Also, in fact, those can cause acute kidney failure in dogs and cats.
Wow.
So be careful with those. And mint family. You plant a mint, it gets really big.
Sure.
Those are not good for your pets either. Peppers, not good for your pets. And of course, tomatoes, like we talked about before. Aloe vera is not good either. And it's good for us,
Good for
but it's
us,
not
but-
good for your pets. And of course, there's a lot of other spices that are not good for your pets. And just think about it, when you're cooking, you use these spices and you want to, Fido gets a bite or the cat gets a bite. Well, if it's got some of the spices that they don't need to have in the herbs, you're not doing your dog a favor by giving them those. So
Yeah, 'cause-
just be careful. Just be careful.
Because of course I'm thinking about catnip.
Well, yeah,
Catnip,
yeah.
yeah.
But believe it or not, parsley is also one of the things that you cannot give
Oh, man.
animals.
Wow.
It's not good for them.
Good
Now we're
for
go-
caterpillars, but not.
not-
All right.
So we'll go on to bulbs.
Yeah.
Amaryllis, caladiums. Of course, there's a lot of problems with caladiums. Even people have problems with caladiums. Crocus, daffodils.
Yeah.
Daffodils are deer resistant. Well, your pets shouldn't be eating daffodils either. Gladiolas, those are not good for your pets. Hyacinths, and a lot of the lilies. They're not all the lilies, but a lot of the lilies are bad. And tulips, not good.
And tulips. Wow.
Don't let them eat those either.
Okay.
Some of the vines that aren't good.
Vines?
Clematis, English, and Boston ivy is not good for pets, and that's that you could have that all over your yard.
Yes.
Morning glory, and wisteria, and you
wisteria.
find wisteria in the woods
Yeah.
and the seeds and pods and stuff. Don't let your dogs and cats play with those.
Golly, okay.
Yeah. Then shrubs.
Shrubs.
Shrubs, azaleas and rhododendrons, and in fact, if they are one of the cardiotoxins again.
Okay.
And if just a few azalea leaves can be toxic to your dog. Yeah, not good. Boxwood, burning bush, the euonymus, that's not good. Gardenia, those are not good for pets. Hydrangeas,
Yes.
they are also cardiotoxic. So that affects their heart too, as is Japanese Pieris. That is also a cardiotoxic plant to have around. And of course, one thing they're going to encounter just almost everywhere is privet. And how many, privet is not good for dogs and
like
cats
privet,
either.
right.
I don't know how you can get away with that. I mean, it's in the woods, it's everywhere, but
Right.
it's not good for them to eat. But how many times have you, seen people, getting rid of the privet and the sticks
just
are around
toss it,
and
yeah.
the dogs are running around the neighborhood? That's not good for your pet. And then of course oak trees, the acorns are not good for your dogs to ingest. And I actually caught one of my dogs with, I said, "What are you chewing on?" I opened up their mouth and there's an acorn. I'm like, "Stop eating stuff like that." I don't know why, but they do it, and that's one of the things to watch out for. So just watch your pets. Be careful and observe them. Don't just let them out there and for them to themselves and don't watch what they're doing.
Right.
The best list that there is around of toxic and non-toxic plants is on the ASPCA.org website. They have long lists of things to look at, because this is just the most common ones that I picked out.
Okay. And we'll have a link to that, but those are just the most common.
Those are those common.
That's a lot of
It's
common.
a lot of common plants
plants.
that I have in my yard.
Right, that a lot of people.
A lot of people have in their yard. That's why I say, well, see, you notice I caught my dogs, when they were doing stuff, so I knew what they were, ingesting or trying to ingest. And I tried, and I stopped them. So that's what you've got to do. Pay attention to your pets.
Pay attention. All right, Joel, that's good stuff. So we got to keep Fido and Fluffy safe, right?
Keep them safe.
And Glory and
And
Chevy.
Chevy, yeah.
Got to keep them safe. Good stuff. All right.
Typically, I use 3 basic fertilizers in my vegetable garden. The first one is 6-12-12. You notice it's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. On root crops like carrots, beets, radishes, you don't want a lot of nitrogen, otherwise you're going to get a lot of foliage, but no fruit. So by having it 6-12-12, more of it goes into the actual growing of the bulbs, carrots, beets. 3400, which is all nitrogen, no phosphorus or potassium, I like to use this on green crops. So I use 3400 on crops like lettuce, broccoli, spinach, or your various greens that you grow. For all else, like squash, cucumbers, watermelon, corn, tomatoes, I like a balanced fertilizer. In this case, I use 15-15-15, but you can just use 10-10-10, except when you're using 10-10-10, you use a little bit more. If you're using 15-15-15, use a little bit less.
All right, here's our Q&A segment. These are great questions. You ready? All right, here's our first viewer email. How do I get rid of a 1/4 acre of bamboo established 50 years ago? And this is from Bill. We're talking bamboo 50 years. It's been established.
There's just no way to say this other than this is going to be a challenge.
It's gonna be
I
tough.
mean, with time and with a lot of sweat.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that come to
Yeah.
mind for me. Of course, we know bamboo's in the grass family.
Yeah.
You got to get as much of the root mass as possible. That's number one, all right?
Yeah.
It might be some machinery involved in
Yeah.
that. Number two, if you mow often enough, maybe you can deplete the rhizomes of the carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Maybe?
No, I would agree. I think that it'll be a process, and there's always the option combined with mowing. There might be some herbicide options, and for a scale, of course, everybody needs to make their own decisions about
Yes.
that. But for this large an area, it's something to consider. There are barriers. I'm telling you, the barriers they crack me up, right?
Okay,
Because
all right.
people will
Let's
talk
hear 'em.
about, well, you could pour concrete, but then over time, the concrete will have a crack, and
Come right through it.
It is, yeah. So we're talking about one of the more aggressive, challenging, weedy options.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can't get all of the root mass, yeah, I would just mow it and mow it and
Yeah.
mow it and mow it, and hopefully
Weaken.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can deplete it of its
Yeah.
carbohydrates. And then you did mention the herbicide option as a non-selective,
Right.
option that you can use.
Yeah.
Just read the following label on
Yeah.
that, but it's still going to be multiple
Right. Right.
applications.
Yeah. No matter what you do, there's no silver bullet on this one.
All right, Mr. Bill, good luck. All right, here's our next viewer email. I have a skip laurel that got bad winter burn this past winter. It is 3 years old and seems really happy in this location. It has more than doubled in size since planting. I find some green wood under the bark and some sprouting down low. How hard should I prune it back to help the shrub recover? If I need to prune back more than 50%, I would rather replace it. It's under a ledge against the house facing south-southeast. What are common reasons for this condition? And this is Brian from Thompson Station, Tennessee. So the old skip laurel, all right, having some issues with a little winter burn. I could see that little freeze damage, right, from the winds.
Oh, it has
Yeah.
been variable all through the season this spring.
Okay, and we always tell folks, well, yeah, if you can find that green tissue,
Yeah, it's a good sign.
It's a good sign, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that, though? I mean, do you cut it all the way back to the green tissue, and yeah, you reduce the plant by 50%? Would you keep it, plant something else?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would answer that in the in the context of the broader planting
Okay,
area,
alright.
the site.
Okay.
Because he does mention that it's under a ledge, and so
under a
I started to
ledge.
think about site drainage, some of those
Right.
things. I would make that in context of, is this really a high quality species,
Okay.
or is it potentially time to think about?
Maybe just time to
replacement.
think about replacing it, moving
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
perhaps. But look, I like for folks to be citizen scientists, right? If you want to reduce it by 50%,
Right,
not 50 cents. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just see what happens though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what happens to it. I mean, they grow relatively fast.
Yeah.
So I would do that just to see.
Well, and because they're already willing to
Yeah, I
replace
mean-
if necessary, it's sort of a win-win, and in some ways, yeah.
Yeah. I guess, for me, I'm just curious. I just like to see what happens. If it doesn't come back, then of course, you can replace it.
Yeah,
You just
I know.
always do
I
that.
had a lot of damage in a variety of shrubbery. It was a rough gardenia year for me.
Okay, I think
Yeah.
it's a rough year for everybody, for the most part. So thank you for that question, Brian. We appreciate that. All right, here's our next viewer email. I know of an area in Pennsylvania where grape hyacinth has been growing wild and naturalizing for decades. I would like to transplant some into my garden in Maryland. This past weekend, I tried to dig them with a trowel, but it seemed like we were unable to dig deep enough to find a bulb. Is it possible that grape hyacinth bulbs are just too deep to dig since they've been growing in that location for so many years? And this is More Must Be Better on YouTube. I like that. More Must Be Better. So what do you think? Is it possible that they're just
I think we may just need a larger shovel.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Larger shovel, dig
Yeah.
down a little deeper. Because, yeah, look, they shouldn't be any deeper than about, what, 5 inches?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think. I mean, we'll plan actually
Yeah.
shallower than that
4 or
if we
5
were
inches? Yeah.
establishing them again. Yeah, and of course there is a risk. Of course, if you dig them too shallow, then you just take the tops. And,
Yeah,
you
this
know,
is true.
you miss the
This is true.
you miss the bulb. But I smiled at this question because grape hyacinths I grew up
Okay.
in more northern climates than where I
that's
live now
right,
in
yeah, yeah,
Tennessee,
right,
and
right.
so they were just a great bulb. And we're getting to the part now I have them growing all over my yard. I never thought of them, as a mildly invasive species, but they move pretty well.
Mm-hmm. They move pretty well. I
Yeah.
have some in my landscape as well. I have dug some up before.
Yeah.
Didn't have to dig too deep.
Yeah, where I have them, they're only 3 or 4 inches.
Yeah, 3 or 4 inches, but yeah, a bigger shovel. That's exactly what I thought of. And that should get it for you. More must be better. Thank you
Yeah.
for that question. All right, that was fun. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
All right. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. If you want more information about getting a garden or landscape started in a new place, or about the plants that are dangerous for pets, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.